two screenings of the controversial film Russians at War are going ahead today at the TIFF Lightbox. This comes despite a lot of opposition. CP24's Andrew Brennan is following the latest developments. You also have a lot of reaction for us, Andrew.
Yeah, Lena, we talked to some people that wanted to go see the film. Some unable to even get tickets because of the demand to actually go. The tickets were sold out for the screening at 2. They're going to try to come back tomorrow. That being said, we've also spoken to a few, there's dozens, I would say about 100 to 150 people here right now, maybe closer to the 100 mark. That being said, when I've spoken to people, one man said blatantly that he hoped that the head of TIFF would never have to think about knowing family members that have been lost either in bombings or having artillery fired over their head. That being said, with all of these perspectives, we're going to bring in Chris Alexander, a former diplomat and former cabinet minister as well under the Harper government back in 2011 to 2015. And we do thank you for your time, sir. And you said that you wanted to make sure that you were here, and why?
Well, I love TIFF. I love films. I think this whole city does, this whole country does. I don't like to see a major Canadian cultural institution being used. The war that Ukrainians are fighting against Russian aggression is, in my view, the most important international event underway today. Russia is desperate to ensure that Canada, the United States, and other countries do not equip and arm Ukraine to win. They've lost many of their levers over us. There used to be Russia Today on our cable. There used to be Russia Today programming on Meta platforms, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, as well as on YouTube. All of that has been banned. Canada has sanctioned Russia Today, so they're looking for new ways to get in front of Canadian audiences. And unfortunately, one of those ways is to exploit film festivals, taking a Russia Today director to get Canadian funding to make a film behind enemy lines and get in front of Canadian eyeballs. This is war propaganda. There's no two ways about it. I think the people behind me know what they're talking about on this issue. It's going to be available online. No one's talking about censorship here. It should not have a platform at TIFF, which is a festival devoted to empathy, respect, dignity, art. This film is none of those things.
Just on the concept of censorship and bringing it back to the director, and we had also, a few minutes before we started speaking, we heard from the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who was among those speaking out as the film was being first screened and then those screenings were canceled. Anastasia Trofimova has said it almost is akin to state censorship to have the Deputy Prime Minister come out against a film, have screenings be canceled, and have so many people who haven't seen her work to describe it as being propaganda. Because this is how, from her perspective, that's what she has said. Now, what do you say to that perspective?
I would like to hear Trofimova denounce the totalitarian regime that she served for 6 years with Russia Today. I would like to hear her speak out against a regime that has killed journalists, that censors coverage of this war, that whitewashes genocide, invasion, and aggression. It is the Russian government today that is bringing hate speech into our lives, that invest in it through Russia Today and other platforms. She has a lot of nerve, to be honest, condemning Chrystia Freeland, a very courageous leader on these issues, or our government, which is a government in a democracy, when she herself worked for a state institution for 6 years that is arguably the most repressive on the planet today.
So the last thing, Chris, you said that this isn't about censorship and that it's available, the film will be available online. For those that have come to see the film today and want to make up their minds for themselves, well, what do you say to them?
I'd say you're making a mistake. You're walking in front of people who know the situation better than you do. Those people would do better to talk to Ukrainian Canadians and some Ukrainians here about what's going on in that country. They won't see it in the film. Yes, the film exists. Yes, it will be available online. There's no question of that. We do not censor things in this country the way they do in Russia, but it should never have been made. And there's a larger question here, not only of it being platformed by TIFF, but of it being funded by the Canadian Media Fund, by TVO initially, by Hot Docs, British Columbia financial government agency. All of these groups and the dozens of public servants who had a hand in arranging for this funding need to give their heads a shake. They need to ask themselves how this could have happened, why they sidestepped the issue of Trofimova's affiliation with the Russian state. Another film was made in parallel with this film in Russia by Trofimova's boss, who's called Yakovleva, who's still the head of Russia Today documentaries. It was called Agit Brigada, about the propaganda units that operate in the Russian army, celebrating them, celebrating the lies they tell, celebrating the patriotic story of killing Ukrainians, which is the way these Russian propagandists see it. That film, she was in the parts of Ukraine that Trofimova went to almost around the same time. The two productions mirrored each other, one for domestic audience, one for a foreign audience. There's no question that this is war propaganda, and I don't think any Canadian wants our leading cultural institutions or our governments funding or platforming Russian propaganda at this time when Ukrainians are dying, when Ukrainians, civilians, are being targeted by Russian drones for sport. When a Ukrainian prisoner of war had a sword stuck in him today with a sign on it saying, "For Kursk," they're murdering prisoners of war. Will Trofimova do her next film about that? I strongly doubt it. She says she wants to go back to Russia. She sees potential, that Russia Today was a liberal organization when she lived there. Those are the words of propagandists. Those are the lies of propagandists. We won't stand for it. Americans shouldn't stand for that kind of lying by Russia's allies in their election campaign. We shouldn't stand for it in our film festivals or in films that are funded by taxpayers' dollars in this country. These are tough issues. These are hard-edged issues. It's a war that isn't always in the headlines, but that is killing more people weekly than any other conflict in the world today. And we have to ensure that Ukraine wins. When we platform films like this, it makes people a bit disoriented. It makes people a bit troubled. We're talking about the film. We're not talking about getting armored vehicles to Ukraine, and we would do better to focus on the latter.
Chris, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your time, and we're going to send it back inside and talk to more people later on. Back to you.
All right, Andrew, thanks so much for that conversation.